Well, hello and happy Easter, everyone who celebrates. I hope you are doing well. I hope you had an opportunity to spend some time with your family no matter what. I am glad to see that you are here and have made it. Really excited for today. This is the extra special, extras special, and I've got a number of different people here waiting in the waiting room. They are ready to talk about extra gear, extra experiences, all the things extra that go into doing a thru hike, specifically the Colorado Trail. But if you're not hiking the Colorado Trail, if you're hiking some other trails, stay tuned because all of this will apply to you for the most part. Maybe not. I don't know. We're going to find out what they all have to say. Really excited to talk to you about this. I want to mention a couple of different things before we get started. First thing is, if you are not subscribed to the channel, be sure you do so and be sure that you add a comment so that you can be entered to win this guy here. There are actually two of them, a couple of stainless steel wine glasses that have outside comfort zone stickers on them already. You can probably peel them off. If that's not your bag, that'll be just fine as well. So be sure to make a comment because at the end, what I'll do is I've got an automatic giveaway tool generator. We're going to go ahead and pull up a winner for those and I will ship them out to you first thing tomorrow. So make sure you make some sort of a comment. It can just be, listen, snack box, your hair looks great today. That works just fine. Whatever you want to put will be fine. Now let's get into the heart of this. We're going to be talking about extras and we're thinking about extra things, extra experiences, all the stuff that is not an essential part of a hike, but make that hike better in some way, shape, or form. And to do so, I decided I would call on three of my favorite Colorado Trail celebrities from the Facebook group, from my personal hiking experience, from my life. We're going to start here first with Sage and 5-Star. Sage and 5-Star, I had the distinct pleasure of meeting you both at Tennessee Pass last summer. And we had 5-Star there. We had been talking a little bit on the Facebook group and separately before then. And so had a great opportunity to sort of bump into you two at the trail. Remember us having a really good conversation, which could be one of those extras, the good conversations you have on the trail. And I think I spent maybe 3 hours extra at Tennessee Pass just talking to you all and having a great time there. Really nice to see you all. How are you two today?
So good.
Doing well. Great to be with you.
Great. We're gonna get to talking about some of those trail names shortly. So hang tight there while I bring in our last guest commentator here. This is Rolf Kanikanik, who is familiar to most people who have asked a question on that Facebook group, specifically because we don't see many Rolfs, right? So Rolf is a pretty unique name in and of itself, and to say nothing of the trail name Kanikanik. So let's start there, Rolf. Why don't you kick us off and tell us a little bit about how you got this name Kanikanik?
Sure, I'll tell you. That was thanks to Sage and 5-Star. When I decided to hike the Colorado Trail last year, one of the early things I did was join the Facebook group that was for Colorado Trail 2021. And I'd encourage anybody to do that for 2022 or beyond if they want to join. And shortly after I joined, I got a message from 5-Star saying, hey, you look kind of, he was being very kind. He said, you look about the same age as me. You want to be accountability buddies to train? And I said, absolutely, because I have zero accountability. I could sure use some. And it was great. I've made a lifelong friendship, and I think it was critical for me to join. We ended up, as it was, starting on the trail the same day, and Sage joined us, which was an extra plus, and the three of us took off together. And shortly afterwards, the two of them already had trail names, but they said, you need to get a trail name. You need to get a trail name. And I came up with one that didn't work too well. It was
really good, though.
It was called Spats. Nobody knows what spats are anymore.
Aren't they the shoe thing?
Yes, the shoe thing. And I just thought it was kind of cool how, they've got these dirty girl gaiters and stuff, and they look kind of like spats. Well, nobody knew what that was. But I really was enjoying learning about plants. And Kanikanik is actually a kind of plant. Another name for it is bearberry. And if you're hiking the Colorado Trail, once you know what it is, you'll see it everywhere. It's all over the place. And it covers ground slowly. And that's why I thought that was a pretty fitting name. We were talking about a plant that could be named. And so that's how I got up with Kanikanik.
That's great.
So even more fun to say than spats.
Yes.
That's the thing that struck me too, is that it's one of those that you look at it and it's intimidating at first, but once you
It is.
start saying it, it really just rolls off the tongue, sort of like the Kennebec, right?
Yeah.
It's got that sort of the rhythm. So I love that. And I love the idea of covering ground slowly. I like to hike a lot of miles when I hike, but I have to wake up at 5 a.m. to do so and not stop until 8 p.m. So I'm very familiar with the moving slowly. I think covering ground slowly. I think that's the better phrase you use there. What about you, Sage? How did you get the name Sage?
Got the name Sage from 5-Star. And really because our first long hike, first attempt at a through hike was in the deserts of Utah. There's a lot of sagebrush. And I don't have a strong nose. I have a very weak nose. It's usually plugged. But I would always be able to smell the sagebrush when I would molest the sagebrush and smell it with my hand. And it was constant and a big extra of the Haydock Trail to be able to always have that smell with me. And it made me feel at home wherever I was. So
That's great.
The obsession with sage.
She's also very wise, so it's a fitting nickname for her. She's
Yeah.
always got a lot of wise things to say.
It's nice having those folks who have some insight. And I remember that from our conversation, actually, that there were some really good insights in that conversation. And I wish I should have brought my sticker that you gave me, because it's still here. I just don't have it out with me. But I remember that there was a sticker that you gave that had quite a bit of meaning and sort of outlined a different way of looking at the world that I remember. And so hopefully if you get a chance,
Definitely one of my extras.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Maybe we can get a picture of it shared at some point to the Facebook group or on Instagram. That would be really cool. So no surprise here. Maybe to people's surprise, I specifically saved 5 stars for the end because I have a feeling it will apply here somewhat to what we're talking about here. So 5 star, how did you get the trail name 5 star?
Yeah, well, I'm a planner by nature, and I like to make sure that I've got all the good things to bring along, right? And so, if there's kind of two components, one is having just the right amount of stuff that you need for when you need it, and then I think there's a pretty good attitude of being worn out on the trail and looking at the place that you're at that moment as something less than if you're having a bad mood, or if you just got out of a thunderstorm, and always trying to look at the silver lining of the campsite that we're staying at, and really seeing. I think the way it started was like we'd set up camp and I would say, this is a 5-star spot. And so
I don't think it started. I think I just recognized I was having a 5-star experience with you always. And I didn't do backpacking before.
That's perfect. Well, I mean, it really sort of sums up quite a bit. And I think it's worth noting for each of the viewers here. So just thinking of that 5-star experience, it's important to note that all 3 of the guests here have done a through hike of the Colorado Trail. Everybody has also contributed to the Colorado Trail community through either service groups or the Colorado Trail Facebook group, or some donors as well. I know in the group have been really generous to the cause of the Colorado Trail. If you check their Facebook or if you check their donor list, you can see a couple of familiar names and friendly names there. Now, some of the things here that are also important is that, as Sage and 5-star were mentioning, they've been doing some hiking actually out on the Haydock Trail. And for those of you who aren't familiar, this is a very difficult, challenging trail because of lack of water resources, and also the sun exposure is really extreme. So it's in many respects very similar to that segment 2 that you may have heard me talk about over and over again. And the reason I bring this up here is that it's important for us to kind of keep some perspective as we're thinking about this stuff, that some of the things that make our hikes better, it doesn't mean it will make it easy. And it doesn't mean that if you like a couple of luxury items that you have somehow become some sort of a glamper out there. That the truth be told, this is about people who are carefully thinking through every item and every ounce in their pack, something not unlike what we get from mad hippies here, who also did a through hike of the Colorado Trail and very concerned about the sticker weight. And I have to tell you, I weighed these mugs before and they were about 6 ounces each. And then I put the sticker on them, and the sheer weight of having to carry the name outside comfort zone. These are 17 pounds a piece right now, but they are very well worth it. I have to tell you, I wouldn't lead you astray on this. Now, I also want to share a couple of things before we get really rolling. I want to mention one big event coming up later on. I want to show this one. And if you watch Girl Plus Dog Adventures, some of you may know that I'm a big fan of this one. She is hosting a meetup at Hilltop Packs. That's out in Waynesburg, Pennsylvania. It's going to be a weekend, 2 weeks from yesterday on the 30th. So if you live out there in Western Pennsylvania in the mountains, be sure you stop by. She'll be there with Remy. She decided that she didn't want to take her new partner, and I'm not sure why. I think he might snore. I don't know a whole lot of that story, but be sure you stop by. I'll be reminding everybody of that as well. There also might be a live stream from Hilltop Packs, and if you are in that big debate thinking about your food storage options, if you're going to do a bear hang, that Hilltop Packs bag is a great option for you, specifically because it's light, it's super durable, and it's a small business, and it's one that's well worth supporting because they've done some great stuff supporting the backpacking community, and they're coming up with some new stuff out there. They're not a sponsor, but I just want to mention them as well. So here's how it's going to work, everybody who's watching. So we've already had this bit of a conversation beforehand. What we're going to do here is we are going to go in sort of the order that I see people here. So we're going to start with Sage, then 5-star, then Kanikanik, and then I'll take some turns as well. And we're going to share our extra items and take turns talking about them a little bit. So basically, we're going to get a rundown of what everybody thinks is a great extra item that might be worth the extra weight. And maybe sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't. In which case, we're going to hear why you think sometimes it's worth carrying and what would help you make that decision about whether or not you'll include it in your bag. So, Sage, without further ado, you have the floor with the first item.
All right.
Or experience.
It's both.
It's both. Chuck E. Cheese tokens.
Bidet, mate.
It's the bidet?
It's the bidet. It is the handheld bidet. And light, totally practical, doesn't take up space, but is life-altering.
All right. So I have to ask about this one because I see Rolf nodding right there. I know he's a big fan. Here's my thing, and I don't understand it because I've not been down the bidet alleyway. Now, my understanding of it is that it's just a nozzle that fits on a smart water bottle and then does what bidets do. Now, I'm thinking gravity here. And how do you use a separate bottle for it? It's surely not your drinking bottle, right?
We use a separate bottle.
Okay.
But you don't need to. You just fill it with water and you squeeze and it comes out at this little
Very high pressure.
Very high pressure when you squeeze it. Can you even see the little?
No.
Yeah.
It's a little tough to see, but I can kind of imagine.
There it is. There it is. You can see in the
oh, yep.
See the little hole?
Yep.
And you get a smart water bottle that's super compressible. Fill it with water and you squeeze, and there's so much control and such a cleaner experience.
No toilet paper, right?
No toilet paper.
Yeah.
Totally cuts down all the toilet paper, and I can just use those smart wool or whatever wool underwear, merino wool underwear. Dries right out. Much better experience.
I have to tell you, it sounds interesting to me. It sounds worth a try. And my hiking buddy, when I did the JMT, didn't carry either toilet paper or a bidet. He used brush and weeds. And I don't feel comfortable trying to figure out what poison ivy is and isn't. And I'm very afraid of
I have a friend with a very bad experience with that. And no, you don't know.
Yeah, it seems a little scary, but that does seem really fascinating. And I think you can order them offline, I'm assuming.
Yeah, under $10.
That sounds perfect. I might have to give one a go and maybe get a couple of them, and they can be the giveaway for the 1,000 subscribers, which hopefully will be coming soon. Let's talk 5-star. Oh, go ahead, Rolf.
Can I show my version? Because I totally agree with Sage. Now, I am not a purist. I do take along a little bit of toilet paper just because you never know, I guess. But it's really kind of like it's a pressure washer for your butt, and so you can use a water bottle. There's no reason why you can't use your own drinking bottle because it doesn't get anywhere near anything bad. I mean, you're squirting out stuff from a long distance or reasonably long distance. So there's various kinds. There's the kind Sage has. This is a rather pretty cheap version. I got like 3 of these for I think $10. It's like soft plastic. Just squeeze it into the bottom of a smart water bottle, and it's got a little hole in front. I just got this, which is a guy who is also on YouTube. He makes these himself, and I think you can maybe see the 4 little holes here. He claims that these are directionally made so that they will have optimum cleaning power. And this weighs 0. I'm worried about losing this, frankly, but it's same thing. Put it on a water bottle. I've found this to be a perfect use for these Sawyer bottles, water things which aren't very good for carrying water.
That's right.
Carrying bidet water or whiskey, or both, preferably not at the same time.
That's terrific. That's, I mean, really, really interesting. And also one of the things that I think Sage mentioned, I want to make sure is highlighted for especially the new hikers in the group, not carrying toilet paper or at least minimizing it is really helpful, especially because one thing that I think is absolutely essential for us if we're going to keep this trail pristine in the future is that we need to be carrying out any used toilet paper. And so, there are a number of times when you're hiking and you'll get to a spot that's a sort of common campsite and you'll see it. And you can kind of figure out, if you think about where people would naturally gravitate to go, you can walk into the woods 10, 15 steps and find a lot of toilet paper just where you would think it would be. And so it's important that we find options that either don't leave toilet paper behind, or if you're going to take toilet paper, which is totally fine as well, but take something to carry it out. And so a lot of people like to line a plastic bag, a Ziploc bag with some foil, and that really helps prevent smells from getting out. But I love the idea of a bidet because it does make sure that you're not leaving toilet paper behind. And with each year, as the trail gets more and more popular, it becomes even more important to make sure that we are taking good care of that 500 miles. Because I can tell you it's special. And the John Muir Trail that I've done in 2018, it had so much toilet paper and waste everywhere. It was really a real bummer that you could be 50 miles from the nearest paved road and still finding toilet paper. So let's all do our part when we head out this summer and make sure you're doing a good job taking care of that. And the bidet is one great option for making sure you're able to do so.
Especially on the Colorado Trail where there is a lot of water.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. There's a lot of water, but it's also up high. There's not a lot of rain to wash it away, that alpine tundra. And so it's sort of a double-edged sword there where we have to be really cognizant of how we're treating that area. And again, Mad Hippie's Life, they did the trail a little while ago, have a great series on it. I mentioned it a number of times, and I'll keep mentioning it until the day I die. But they are sort of the best ambassadors for understanding what to do on the trail. And really paying attention to that, making sure we're being good stewards of the land, I think is important for the years to come. Now, what do you think, 5-star? Where should we go next?
All right, so I'm into sleeping systems. So I'm, versatility of sleeping systems. So what I've got here is, this is yeah, okay. So we're in the same club. I think I've got the okay. So here's the thing for me is I don't like the idea of like special outfits for sleeping. It's that all weighs weight, and I also find I use an Alight Equipment quilt, and I find that every time that you touch those things with water or wash them in any way, you're degrading the quality of the bag. So I really work hard to protect the the inside surface, keep the sweat and grime, all those bad smells that join up. And these liners are, one, it gives you like 3 more options for warmth, right? So you can just sleep in this alone if it's a really warm night, or this with like 2 different configurations of the quilt. So for me, just keeping the bag clean, which a good bag or quilt is a huge investment for any of us backpackers. So you really don't want to be putting any of that weird sweat stuff all over the bag and have it be its own attractant to wild animals. And keep it, just keep it fresh. Wipe yourself down before you get into your sleeping bag liner, and then just enjoy your night. And it, I think it weighs like 11 ounces. So definitely, like I like to sleep nude, so I don't have any clothes for nighttime.
No extra pajamas.
Nothing extra.
Yeah.
So in a way, this is like nice and compact and less weight than. So like that's a great luxury for me. Just keep preserving my investments.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of different uses for it. And I actually had mine set up with I mean, same thing. I didn't know you were going to bring yours, but it was one of my extras. And it was one of my extras for a number of reasons. One of them is that it adds about 8 degrees to the temperature rating of your sleeping bag. And so that can be really big. You know, what you were saying, I was giving you a little bit of grief about sleeping without your clothes on. But actually, if you were a person who is prone to blisters or chafing, then that is a really great way to get a reset. That the weirdest thing about both of those is if you sleep without, if you get blisters, sleeping without your socks on will help them dry and heal. Same thing with chafing. If you're prone to that, it will help it heal by the next morning. Typically you'll be fine. But if you leave on, especially synthetic underwear, then you tend to not get that healing time. So you end up, it can be much worse. So having a liner like this helps. And also if you use sunscreen, which you probably should be, unless you have full sun protection in terms of a sun hoodie, etc., this keeps that from getting on your sleeping bag, protects the investment. Just as a pro tip to everybody as well, one of the things that I found is you can leave this in your sleeping bag when you stuff it into your compression sack. And so that also saves space because it basically, you don't even notice it in the sleeping bag sack. So when I go on the trail, I leave behind the little orange ditty bag here and just take the rest of it with me. And so that's nice. And it also can be cleaned with your regular laundry. It doesn't need that downwash. So a lot of different reasons I love these. They're not inexpensive. They're about 50, 60 bucks, depending on which one you get. Well worth it though, because it'll protect, as you mentioned, a good sleeping bag can run anywhere from, especially down, can run anywhere from the low 200s to upper 600s, really, depending on how nice it goes. Very good investment. I love this choice as well as a good extra. It's not essential, obviously, but I think it can actually make a lot of sense to carry, even though, as you mentioned, 11 ounces for an ounce counter is no small amount of weight.
But do you all find that you can get by with a lighter sleeping bag with those? I mean, a less heavy sleeping bag, less down, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, me personally, I sleep warm anyway, so I go with a lighter one. And then if I get cold, I also, I don't have one with me, and I wasn't sure if I'd bring it as an extra, but I take an old school Nalgene, the translucent one, and I'll put hot water in that before I go to bed and put it in the bottom of the liner. And that will take any sleeping bag up 20 degrees. And if you wrap the Nalgene in a t-shirt, it will last until the morning, and then you'll still have warm water for breakfast in the morning. What about you, 5-star and Sage? What did you find with
For
that?
me, it's just more versatility. I don't, you know, we never really were like, Kanikanik, you know, I think we use a 20-degree quilt, and you're more colder temps, but I do think that it is much warmer. So you could design that into your sleep system.
Yeah, I did. I mean, just anecdotally, and again, I sleep hot, so you'll have to take this with a grain of salt. But I used an 18-degree bag with this, which advertises 8 degrees, so it would have been a 10-degree bag. And I slept in New Hampshire in the Zealand hut, and it was 0 degrees inside, -7 outside, and I was warm all night when I did the Nalgene trick with this. And so it did work for me. I don't know that it worked for everybody, but I would also say you kind of measure that based against your own experiences. And it can be tough because if you're a cold sleeper, that's just a hard one. Because I mean, your sleep, if it gets messed up, then your morale game kind of can get affected. And that's one of the hardest things I think people don't talk about enough is how you keep your morale up on a longer hike. Because you know, you're going to hit highs and lows no matter what. The question is whether or not you can maintain or keep few enough of those lows that you don't bail on the trip, or you know, you keep the lows sort of shorter and abbreviated in that respect. So it's a tough one.
The last trip that we took, it was below freezing every night, and the liner was really helpful with the hat. You could pull the liner over your head, and it's a lot more breathable than if you done a sleeping bag. And if you pulled the sleeping bag over your head, you would have damaged the down with the moisture from breathing and frost.
Yep. You know, the coldest I've ever been was in the Everglades, if you can believe it. And it's a whole story for elsewhere, but really that humidity can be such a tough one. It's a really hard one, especially if you can't dry out your down. But there have fortunately been a lot of advancements in terms of down treating it and such. Let's talk about the next one. Kanikanik, you are up. What do you have for us here?
I'm a little older. I'm 63, and I guess with age comes lack of mobility. And all of the packs you see nowadays have these little pockets in the back to put your water bottles, which is great. I just can't reach them. I try as I might. I try to get my arm around there, and I just can't get them. So for me, definitely a luxury item, but it only weighs about 1.5 ounces, is something like a shoulder water bottle holder. I've got 3 different kinds now. I've been experimenting. This is a very lightweight one made by a named Justin. But my favorite one is by a company called CMYK CTYK Chicken Tramper gear, and it's just a really nice one that just fits on my shoulder strap, so I can easily get my water bottle in and out, and I'll drink more. I stay hydrated. It's been a game changer for me because I never used to be hydrated enough, and now I'm drinking all the time. So a lot of people I think might not even consider this a luxury anymore, but it's definitely worth 1 ounce or so to have ready ability to get water immediately.
Yeah, I think that one's really important, especially, I mean, we can kind of put an umbrella over it being anything that helps you get water more easily. So if it's a Camelback, if it's some of the packs where you spend a little more on a pack where you can reach it, if it's the shoulder strap, if it's a water bottle to fit in the shoulder strap, any number of those. And that one can't be understated because the role that hydration plays in preventing soft tissue injuries is enormous in making sure that you're dry and safe. It's also important because if you stay hydrated, then that's going to help you prevent things like making missteps while you're hiking or rolling an ankle, that kind of thing, or just making good decisions. If you're at the base of Hope Pass below me and you're trying to decide whether or not you can make it over before the storm sets in, you want to make sure you have your full wits about you. So I love that idea. I love the idea that it's not a huge, heavy, big extra item, but it is one that a lot of people don't think about right away. But I think sort of the principle here is let's find a way to make sure that the water is easy to drink. And especially if you can't reach it and you're not hiking with somebody who can hand it to you. I mean, that's absolutely key. And actually, Instagresky here, or Gresky is, I believe, what he likes to go by here. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Gresham there. But he also points out that the reach issue is very real. Has that been your experience too, Sage and 5 Star? Or you just hike together so much that you can just kind of help each other out here?
That was more it.
No, she's had enough run-ins with the police that she's like really used to taking her arm behind the back. We both practice.
Yeah.
No, I mostly drink your water.
Yeah, no, that is true. Having a partner to share water with totally alleviates the problem. So we're winning there.
You're a luxury.
You're the extra here. She said she likes to go on solo trips.
Wow.
And I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but now that she knows about the easy water bottle hanger, you might be out of the picture completely. There might not be any reason to take
There's
you
no
on
5-star experience without 5-star.
That's I can't agree more. I think that makes a lot of sense. Great. Yep. And here, Girl Plus Dog Adventures also adds that she carried a small Hydro Pack water bottle just for electrolyte mixes, and then she let her dog carry that when it was empty. Certainly a big thing. And I think if she were here, she would probably mention that a dog on trail is an extra. That hikes are just better if you have a well-behaved dog with you and you're prepared for that hike. I think that can make a big difference on that trip. I love that idea, though. I appreciate that, Kanikanik. I think having the little holder there. And for me personally, I know I look like I'm a biker, so I had a motorcycle wreck years ago and I tore up my shoulder pretty good. So being able to reach is just a problem, especially on the right side. And so I think I'll probably be investing in one of those soon. I think that's a good idea.
Related to the water, one thing I think that from our Hayduk experience, we're used to lugging big amounts of water, but on the Colorado Trail, it was really convenient to do your water at the beginning of the day and load up and have, 2-3 liters of water. But I think it's really important to gauge where your next water opportunities are and don't carry more than you need to, because there's a lot, water is super heavy, right? We all know that. So just like making sure that you're bringing the appropriate amount of water.
Which is to say that Gut Hook is a great luxury item.
That's right. And I think that one, the Gut Hook, or I think they renamed it Far Out, whatever that app is now, that's really key for pairing with the data book, because the data book can tell you where to likely find it. And then Gut Hook can tell you whether or not the water's running. So when you look at the data book, what will happen is you'll see, I love this book, by the way. You'll see they'll have a little cup of water here. You probably can't see it. They'll have little cups of water to tell you where the water is, but the amount of water in the cup. So if it's very full, it will be running. So this is going to be something like the South Platte River. You can always count on that. But the less full that cup is, the less likely it is to be running. It'll be more seasonal. And so knowing that code and then pairing that with gut hook or far out helps, because then you don't have to carry more than you need. And there will be plenty of times where you need to carry those 3 liters. So going through segment 2, where you have 10 miles, going later on, whenever you get to that segment, I think it's 17 or 18, has the cow water in the middle. So you can drink it if you have to, but most people choose to go past it, or even going near the 23 miles before Taylor Lake.
Yeah.
You know, you have to carry a ton of water. So you'll have plenty of opportunity to do so. But I love that idea of really thinking through, this is a special trail that allows you to have some of those opportunities to pare down water when you need to, and know that you're going to find it later on. And that really just kind of takes time. So a lot of people who start out with that mentality, this is the starter mentality, and this is not a slight on new hikers. I hope that's clear, that I want more hikers out there. The starter mentality is to carry something just in case. And so the other mentality, just in case I want it. So I want to, just in case I want to make coffee, I'm going to carry water. The mentality of people eventually reach is, I'm going to carry this in case I need it. And if things aren't going to be problem if I need it, then I'm not going to carry it. So first aid kit you carry because you might need it. Things would be bad, but maybe some people discover that carrying 2 liters of water is not that important because there'll be water later on, or something more like, we're going to talk about, like the bag liner could be one that you could say, I'm not going to carry because I don't need it. Does that kind of make sense? We're talking extras, so maybe I shouldn't have said it that way throughout this, but let's talk for a minute about some of those extras. So I just mentioned one. This is one that I will carry all the time if possible, and that is coffee of any variety. Now, what I will say is I went stoveless on the CT, and last year and the year before I started going stoveless later on. I got to Salida, and then I went stoveless from there to Silverton, where I finished that hike. But I carry coffee, and if I'm going to carry coffee and carry the weight of a stove, I'm going to carry good coffee, maybe some pour over something, or maybe take tea. So something like that will be helpful. But basically, I love carrying some coffee if I can have it. And then if I'm going to carry a stove, I'm definitely carrying good coffee with me as well. Are you all coffee drinkers? Are you stove carriers? What's the food situation here?
Coffee here for sure. But I drink Chaser's Choice at home, for crying out loud. So, but did you find that you could use, like, and you 2 5-star, did you find that you could use coffees like that and that they would work okay with cold soaking or with cold without a stove, just shaking it up with cold water?
Yeah, so we use this, it's like an Italian espresso. Let's see here. And I take 1 part of this and 1 part of sugar and 1 part of whole milk powder. And at the beginning we were using hot water, but then we just had a Gatorade bottle and we just shake it up in the morning. But we actually did the whole Colorado Trail with 1 8-ounce can of fuel.
Yeah.
So that was, between our rehydrated, homemade dehydrated, rehydrated food, and then kind of giving up on the hot coffee in the morning, it was able to really, save a ton of fuel, which is a big deal, right? If you're not using fuel at all, hardly at all. And we've been experimenting with cold soak. One thing I wanted to show was I just got these silicone tops for my titanium bottle or stove, pot, I should say, which transforms it into a pot and a cold soak. So you have all sorts of versatility with that. So it's a new winning combination for us. I know it's off coffee, which is a very important topic.
Yeah. Well, kind of anything with what's that, Sage?
But on stove.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right.
Well, one of the things that you mentioned there kind of sticks with me in terms of that extra, and kind of ties back to what I was saying earlier about the just in case I might want and just in case I might need. When I did the collegiate loop, I actually carried 1 of the 8-ounce stoves and then 3 or the fuels and then 3 of the 12-ounce fuels. So I was packing in somewhere in the ballpark of 45 ounces of fuel. And by the time I finished my 8-day hike of the loop, I still had fuel in the 8-ounce. And I was cooking every meal at that point. But I do think, to Rolf, to your question, what I found is actually I'll carry 2 pouches of Carnation Instant Breakfast, the 8-ounce, or the pouches, the chocolate, and then I'll mix that with the coffee and a couple of pouches of that and shake it up. And then I've also, if I just need caffeine, if I'm going stoveless, then I'll also carry the Crystal Light with caffeine in it. And that's a good sort of substitute. It's not coffee, but the chocolate and coffee flavors are pretty close and pretty similar. So I'll mix those together and it seems to work okay. And the big idea really is just kind of, I miss coffee for sure, but I miss carrying the weight less. So not having the stove and the volume. And there's a domino effect I've mentioned a couple of times on other streams where by not taking the stove and the fuel, it allowed me to go from a 50-liter pack now to a 40-liter pack. And so the weight of the pack is smaller, the balance is better, and it just seems to work out pretty nicely. Now, here's what we've got from Mad Hippies. And Rolf, you might know them actually, Miller and Debbie. But they have the Mount Hagen coffee. Works well in that
Snickers.
cold water.
Yeah.
Snickers.
That's
Yeah,
our tradition too. Cold coffee, Snickers, mild.
Snickers for breakfast sounds great.
Snickers for breakfast.
Control.
Definite luxury item every day.
That's every kid in America who got an Easter basket today is wanting Snickers for breakfast tomorrow. I'm pretty sure that's going to be pretty nationally true throughout the country. Let's turn the conversation away from the coffee, or maybe to something similar. Sage, what's your next extra?
Well, I mean, not to kind of keep on that stream of thought, the stove is a wonderful luxury. And I don't like our breakfast, and I eat it every day, and it is nutritious and it is fortifying. But the only meal that I look forward to eating is dinner, and the 5-star experience of being able to have a delicious, hot, yummy thing just as you get in the tent is awesome. And when you pair that with having olive oil and a little apple juice container, and you stumble upon King Bolita mushrooms or chanterelles on the way, then you get to totally delight in the gift of the trail. And it's extra luxury to be able to have something to cook that in and add into like an amazing pasta dish that just makes everything marvelous and miraculous. So
like a hot meal there with maybe some foraged mushrooms and some add-ons, some olive oil. I think that's great. I actually have a similar I was thinking add-ons for meals. So I brought a couple of different examples here. These are the, let's see if I can hold that up there. Fresh Gourmet crispy beets. You can put this on a lot of things. They've got this garlic, by the way, and holy mess putting that on something and just adding a couple into your bag. So even if you don't know what you're going to put it in, mashed potatoes or ramen, mac and cheese, you name it. They have crispy red peppers. They've got some jalapenos. I think a hot meal at the end of a long day is certainly one of those extras that for a lot of people I mentioned I go stoveless, but I will never look at somebody with a hot meal and think anything but jealousy, right? I absolutely get it. And I have in the past carried heavy food, and I do think there's a future where I might go back to it for sure. So I love that idea.
Difference, the extra of having a partner is also distributed weight, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Snack box. Here's something. You might be trying things like this already, but this is like a little insulated. So my latest thing is taking this insulated, and I take those to go things from like the Asian. It's like a soup container. So I'm ready to cold soak, and then recently we brought some fuel with us, but no stove. We were ready to go cold soak, but if somebody just wanted to lend us their stove for a few minutes, we could just burst it up with a little hot water.
Yeah. And I mean, I think ultimately the solution you had with the cap on the titanium, that looks like a great middle ground, especially with all the stoves getting so light. So you can get the $15 BRS titanium stove then you only have the 8 ounces of fuel. So basically you're dealing with something that's super light and maybe even worth the space and the volume there. So having that double duty is a really good idea as well. And I think you could probably still, with careful planning, and you'd mentioned you were a planner already, you could probably still do a stove and hot meals with less weight if you plan it carefully and you think about exactly what's going in. Because if you think about some of the sort of stoveless favorites, the tortillas are very heavy, the cheeses can be really heavy. You start getting into some weight pretty quickly. So being thoughtful about it. And I love the idea of thinking of those as sort of extra options. I also love the idea with the Colorado Trail. We were talking about the water earlier. I love to encourage people to just try doing cold soaking or stoveless, but still carrying your stove, because what you'd often find is a lot of the things you think you're going to miss, you don't miss nearly as badly. And some of the options, you think about how many times you eat stoveless in your regular life. And, you make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and that's stoveless. So just move it to tortilla and you're there. A lot of different options. That's just one of them. What about you, 5-star? What's next on the docket here? What do you think?
Let's see. Well, switching off maybe material goods. For me, I think before I hiked this trail, we had a meetup in Denver, and one of the gentlemen that was on there, he said, before you get started, write down the reasons that you're doing the trail, and carry that with you. And so if you're having like a dark time on the trail and you're really not sure what the heck you're doing, because let's be honest, it's super easy to bail off the Colorado Trail. It takes like an hour. If you really want to get off the trail, you can do it pretty quickly. So that's a beautiful thing in one way, because everybody that's on the trail wants to be there. Very beautiful. But just to remind yourself and take a moment, it was these random dialogues with strangers. You're passing these CDT hikers, you're gonna see tons of CT hikers, and if you're feeling down about where you're at the moment, just share that. And so that was a big extra, because none of us are unique in that, right? We all have bad days. We're not sure why we're doing it. We miss our moms, whatever it is, so it's really good to remember why you set out to do it in the first place, and if you have that on a piece of paper or something for you. And to really share with other people that you're meeting along the way, which is just like such an exceptional community of beautiful people, and just to really not isolate yourself from that community. And so I guess maybe that's the extra for me, is like really engaging with the people that you meet on the trail, whether they're on bike, motorcycle, horse, or backpacking.
Yeah, I love that. I love the idea not only of writing down why you're doing it, and it doesn't have to be some huge thing, it doesn't have to be that you're hiking it to save seals in Antarctica, right? It can be, I'm doing this to see what I'm capable of, or I'm doing this because I've never tried something like this before. It doesn't have to be a big thing, but I think you're spot on in terms of the Colorado Trail community. And I've done a couple of different trails, and I've not seen one that's quite like the CT. I'm sure there are beautiful communities elsewhere, but what's really great about it is there doesn't seem to be quite the same level of sort of posturing where people are trying to be the toughest, biggest miles. There are people who hike very few miles, and everybody is sort of a community, and they all take care of each other. And I like to say this to people whenever I often will have, I teach in my regular life, and sometimes one of my students will say they want to take off on the trail over summer break, but their parents won't let them. I teach college, by the way. I'm not sending high schoolers out into the woods, but I'll talk to them and say, the cool thing about the CT is that there's always a community, and you'll never hike alone unless you want to. And so it's just such an important thing for people to think about that community and how quickly those bonds can be built. Because the thing that I love about hiking in general is you're so far away from everything that 100% of the people you see are people who care about the same things you care about. So you don't see a lot of people, but they all care about where you are and what you're doing. They're similarly enthusiastic about this. So I think that's spot on as well. Does that sound like your experience? I see you nod down there, Kanikanik.
Yeah, I just, I was so fortunate to be able to hike the first couple of days with Sage and 5-star, but then they went on ahead and I needed to take a break and go back to Denver for a couple of days. And I was a little worried. I thought I'd be lonely. And so two things. One, I thought I'd be lonely, anything but. There were so many people on the trail, not too many, but just so many that you could meet up with. People, I ended up hiking for like 5 days with a group of 5 20-somethings and me. And somehow we all coalesced and we just got along so well. So if anyone is worried about being alone on the trail, I don't think you need to worry. One time I was hiking by myself, but it was thundering. And at one point, another hiker came by and said, "Hey, do you mind if I camp with you?" And I was glad to have the company because I was a little worried about the lightning, frankly. And we both felt more comfort in that. The other part of what you were saying is, taking some time to figure out why you're hiking the trail. Late in the trail, somebody stopped me and asked me, "Have you found what you're looking for?" And I immediately said yes, because I was just loving it. But then I was thinking later on, I could answer yes, but I needed to think a little more about what is it exactly I'm loving. I know that I found it, but what is it? So taking some time to think about that is, I think, a great. I don't think it's even a luxury, really. I think it's
You could almost say, I mean, there's no empirical study to support this, but I would wager that the people who know why they're doing the trail and have a strong sense of that tend to finish more often, because as 5-Star pointed out, the thing about the CT is you can, in most places, be at a paved road in an hour if you should need to, right? So there are forest roads you can often hit. Colorado is very friendly to hikers. And so it's an important one to really have a strong sense of why you're doing it, because there will be lows. There will be massive lows at points where you'll think of things you haven't thought of in years, but there will also be massive highs, and you want to make sure that you're taking care of that and you're able to get through the lows. It's also, for me, it's one of those times where you just kind of figure out who you are. And I always leave with a better sense of clarity at the end of a long hike like that. So I think it's important. I also want to share this with you all because I think this is such a great idea. This is Whitney, who is on CT Trail Mom is her trail name. And she was on the hiking with the CT Hiking as a Woman episode. It's one of the first of these Colorado Trail Talks. If you've not seen it, go check it out, because she was a lasher, which is stands for long ass section hiker, and did a really good job with that, and has been doing big chunks of the trail, and is going out this summer to do the John Muir Trail with a crew that, actually, to your point about meeting friends, she met her entire trail family that will be hiking the John Muir Trail. She met them on trail last year. And she mentioned here that she carries her mantras, intentions on a piece of paper, and other things like hostile phone numbers, which I think is a great idea, because sometimes you will have cell service to make a phone call but not use your internet. I love the idea of having a couple of phone numbers there, maybe printing out a sheet of the trail shuttlers from the Colorado Trail Foundation. It's a good idea. And one thing that I'd encourage everybody to try to remember this summer when you're on trail sitting around camp, this is my favorite thing to do when I make a new group, is to look around and just try to imagine the series of events in this world that had to happen for the group of people sitting at that camp together to be there in the middle of nowhere at that very moment. And to Kanikanik's point, think about the backgrounds, right? And you have this, you'll have people who are retired, you'll have people who just finished high school, you'll have people who are mid-career or midlife, whatever, however you measure your sort of your days, right? You'll have them there at this campsite with different education levels. I've sat with families. I sat last year when I was camping with CT Trail Mom and a couple of others. We sat next to a family, and it was a father and 2 of his kids, and he set out every summer for 2 weeks to hike the trail with 2 of his, I think he has 5 kids. And the plan was they had it scheduled where at the time of high school graduation, all 5 of his children would have completed the CT with their dad. And I love that idea. I thought that was a really cool kind of way to do it. But just think about those connections, and also know that there's a very real likelihood you will keep in touch with most of those people for years and years. It's just bananas how cool it is to meet these friends, and you can pass them one time and have a 20-minute conversation, and next thing you know, you're talking to them because you're going out on a different trail and you're going to see them. I mean, it's really a pretty neat thing. All right, so it looks like you're up, Kanikanik. What do you have for your number 2 here?
Okay, so this is not exactly, it's an extra, but it won't cost you any extra weight. Most of the tents we get, if we're carrying a lightweight or ultralight tents, come with hooks like these. They're Shepard hooks. I painted the tops of mine red so I could find them more easily, but all the red flaked off. Someone told me later, "Dummy, you can't paint titanium; it'll flake off," and they were right. They're nice stakes. They do really well, but sometimes the ground is not quite hard enough. So I went and bought some. These are Groundhog Steaks. MSR makes Groundhog Steaks. Theirs have notches on all 3 sides. I prefer this type, which is very cheap. You can get it on Amazon, which only has a notch on one side. The other 2 are straight, so that it's much less likely to snap off, which some of the groundhogs I've had in the past, if you hammer them hard, they bend and break off. So I'm real happy with these. I only take along 2 of these, and I use them for the most critical parts of my tent. So just gives you a few more options depending on what the ground is.
That's great. I love that idea. I just had someone mention to me the idea of mixing and matching stakes based on where they go on your tent. And I've never thought of that before, but I love that idea because I have the trekking pole tents, and there is often 1 or 2 guy outlines that are, if they aren't solid, the rest of the tent doesn't work. But the others you can often pin down with an old, like your backpack if it's really windy, or you have others. So I love the idea of mixing and matching. I think that's a really good one as well. Anything? Do you have anything like that, Sage or 5-star? Did you? Are you tent modifiers at all? Do you spit in the face of the engineers who designed your tent with everything they have?
We brought on the CT a total luxury tent that is super self-contained and easily. It requires very little.
Which,
three-person Big Agnes tent. So it's like that actually might be the reason for 5-star, because it's so luxurious.
It's so luxurious.
There's just so much room. You can bring your bags in there, like set up and watch. I think maybe one luxury thing was we downloaded like Community. So every night before we fell asleep, we would watch one episode of Community in our little pole holder for the selfie stick. So
that's a great idea.
But
I think the idea of having a tent, this was what somebody told me years ago, and it's why I didn't have a 1-person tent for the longest time. The idea of having your tent, choose the tent 1 person larger than how many you plan on having in it. So if you are taking 2 people, get a 3-person tent. And the Big Agnes 3-person, especially if it's like the Tiger Wall or Copper Spur, is not that much heavier than the 2-person, but the benefit, that added extra, is big. Now, we all obviously want to be careful because every little extra you add can add weight. So if you add a pound to every piece of gear, that's a lot. But if it's one thing that's going to make a huge difference in terms of your comfort at camp, then I think that can be really important.
Our
really
last
helpful.
trip was with the super lightweight 2-person tent that we picked up at REI, and it was super light and it was super comfortable to carry. But it also, to get it right, took a lot more, and the condensation factor was a real factor.
Yeah. That can be a really tough one. One person who went solo on the Colorado Trail in a 2-person tent had a comment to make about that earlier piece. And she said about the part about making friends and meeting people on the trail. And she wanted to point out that if you meet somebody on the trail, you can either 1, keep in touch, or 2, get married to them. And I don't know. Somebody will have to correct me in the comments there. I think she chose the latter. I'm not sure about that. I feel like she might have made that choice. I don't know. Somebody, but I think having really thinking through your gear and also thinking through the stakes is really big, and having some extras. Having some things that are dialed in are really important. And to Sage's point there too, knowing your tent is really helpful, because the first thing you need to do is know the tent to know what you need to change and how you can adjust it. And a lot of the times when you get into the higher end tents, the expectation from the tent maker is that you're not taking it out the way that you bought it, that they will expect you to be swapping out stakes, or they might not even sell them with stakes because they don't want to send you stakes that are just going to end up in your closet. They would rather give you a couple of dollars off because you're going to buy it anyway. And so there are a lot of those things that really knowing that extra knowledge is really critical. So I know I'm using extra for a lot of different things, but I think that can be important. Now, here's my extra, and this is something a buddy of mine, well, I'm going to give two here, and we can go quickly. This is sort of the lightning round. So any that you think we have to get out. So I'll start it up here. We'll go around quickly. I have a hiking buddy that I made years ago in Boston, and he is a super athlete. Just a side note, we sort of fell into this rhythm. We did the Ray Lakes Loop, which if you haven't heard of it or haven't done it, it's RAE Lakes Loop, and it's on the JMT and the PCT. It's in Kings Canyon. It is incredible. So we did this loop and we fell into this rhythm, which I think to Sage and 5 Stars point about hiking with partners, or even Mad Hippies talked about the advantage of having a hiking partner, is that you kind of fall into a rhythm and you figure out this person doesn't like putting up the tent, so this person will get water while they put up the tent, that sort of thing. It's really nice to fall into that rhythm. So this buddy, I would make dinner because I love snacks, obviously. So I'd make dinner and he'd build the fire because I hate building fires. And so I turn around and we had this joke with him. He was actually on one of the cast. His name's Dan, and he runs the Woods Lawn Fitness out in Oregon. And so he would go out, and I remember turning around, I was making dinner, and he had a log, a bona fide log. I mean, it was probably 6 feet long and as big around as a pumpkin, had it over his shoulder to make this fire. And I couldn't stop laughing. I've got a photo of it somewhere I'll have to share. But he taught me two things. And the first thing he taught me is bring a good bar of chocolate. This is just a small one, but bring a good bar of chocolate, because when your morale gets low, here's how it works is if you're hiking with somebody, they tell you when to eat the chocolate. So if 5 Stars feeling low, Sage says it's time, you need to have some chocolate. If you're on your own, you just need to make sure that you save it. It's not a snack. It's just for when your morale hits a low, and it will clean things up really quickly for you. The other thing that he taught me, and I avoided it for years, he would take extra socks. And I always thought 3 pairs of socks are all you need. And I'll spare you all the details, but suffice it to say that when I did the collegiate loop, I took 3 pairs of socks and I couldn't walk for 2 weeks because of how bad the blisters were. Wow. And so what I started doing when I switched over to trail runners, because they're lower than the big boots, I switched over to the ankle socks, and now I carry an extra clean pair of socks for every day. So if my longest stretch without a town day is 5-6 days, I'll carry 6 pairs of socks because they're small enough that I can do so. And I know it's crazy. I see that face right there, Sage, but I don't deal with blisters at all anymore. So I have clean socks every day, and I'm able to make up bigger miles, and my feet are happier. It is just insane. So those are definitely extras. I'm not expecting you all to take that as a tip, but a little bit of chocolate, clean pairs of socks, game changers in my book.
Socks and chocolate.
Socks and chocolate, not together, although maybe, I don't know. Yeah. All right, Sage, what's your lightning round final pick here?
I think there's an earlier mention of sticker that I shared, but I had this sticker that's a kind of a compass that I had on my phone, which is also a total luxury item. I mean, the phone I got right before trail, and the quality of photos on this iPhone that I got just for trail was extraordinary. And so my fun early memories with Kanikanik was Kanikanik enabled my taking the time to get to know every flower along the way. And he had a head start on knowing a lot of the names of the flowers. So the experience of trail magic, and at the center of this sticker, there's a triangle that has liberty, reciprocity, and integrity in there. But the reciprocity flow on the trail with all the trail magic was just extraordinary. And the flower power, collective power of those, getting to pause and really intimately know these amazing beings that were gracious enough to share their beauty with me every single day, that was extra, extra, extra. And so having a partner who is patient enough to be able to handle me and Kanikanik stopping to have a long conversation with every flower was great. And that center triangle of liberty, reciprocity, integrity, that liberty bit, remembering that I'm there by choice and that everyone that I encountered was there by choice. And that freedom on the trail, we hiked through July in the area that, Catherine Lee Bates looked over when she wrote America the Beautiful in 1893, looking out from Pikes Peak. and hiking through. We were hiking 2021. I drew that compass on January 6th, 2021, and hiking over the 4th of July in the most beautiful place on the earth. And every morning getting to remind myself of the core intention I came with, or to just create it new every day. What's up for me today? And be able to newly wake up and create something new every day, having a reminder for that. And with the compass sticker, also had 3 questions that I carried with me, questions that I got to ask everyone that I encountered and walked with for a bit. And that was extra delicious to be able to hear people's super reflective, rich, interesting stories.
Yeah, I think to pull a couple of key threads out of that, I think the idea, I listen to some podcasts, sometimes they talk about overrated, underrated. And I think one of the underrated things that we don't talk about much is when you hike with somebody who's super knowledgeable about something that you didn't even realize you were curious about, right? And so when you hike with somebody who can identify, I remember I passed, it must have been near just after the day that I saw you all, it was somewhere near Timberline Trailhead. I passed a group of people foraging, and they taught me about mushrooms and what to look for. And that sort of, I'd been passing these enormous mushrooms all day, and they were able to tell me about it, and it still sticks with me. And I still remember that excitement and sort of the people who are passionate about something that you didn't realize you could be passionate about. And that part of it, I think those are underrated parts of the trail, and certainly a big piece of it. And also thinking through reminding yourself that this is voluntary, right? That, there are people who go out there and some people, they fall right into it and they love it and they love every minute. And some people don't. And some people don't love that experience of waking up smelling awful and feeling sore. And, that's okay. Sometimes I find when I tell people about my hikes, they often will kind of apologetically tell me about how they car camp and like, oh, I don't do something like that. I car camp. And it's just, if I could wish anything for them, it's that they don't feel embarrassed over that, because it's such a legitimate part of the hiking experience or backpacking or camping or whatever you want to call it. There's no legitimate way to do this. And so going out and just enjoying yourself and figuring out what it is that makes you feel alive or full or whatever term it is, that's perfect. I think back years ago, and I'll quit rambling in a second, I promise, but I had a buddy who did a rock wall. He did the big rock climbing, and he did the AT right after graduating college and the long trail all in the same one fell swoop. And I remember talking to him one day, and I went to a river and I jumped on rocks, and I just jumped rock to rock through the Ocoee River in East Tennessee. And I told him about it, and he was so happy to hear that, because usually people had the opposite, where they would tell him the most extreme X Games Shaun White thing they had ever done. And he just wanted to connect with people who liked nature the way they liked nature, right? And so I love that idea as well. And I also want to just point out here, Mad Hippies point out that you have an awesome trail energy. That was certainly my experience as well. And I think you're going to see a lot of folks who have that sort of, the trail changes you, and it'll make you positive even if you don't want to be, especially you don't make it to Durango if you don't have a good attitude. I'll say that. I've never seen somebody who is miserable arriving in Durango and just negative about everything. And so just not to go too far lightening the mood, but I want to point out this one from CT Mom. She says that her extra is vodka, one shot and electrolyte and water. That's her trail cocktail. And I think a lot of people will maybe pack in some booze of some sort. It's not made the list yet, but I'm sure there are others who would agree with that. So 5-star, what do you think? A handle of Jack Daniels or something different?
So I'm going to say what I thought was a luxury item, but it turns out wasn't at all. And that would be energy supply. So, bringing too big a battery. I've got this is a solar panel that I carried on the Hayduke. It was good, but it was, and then this anchor that was, so, mailed them all home. And this is controversial, but I'm anti headlamps. So I don't see any reason. I'm sleeping by the time that it's dark out, and I'm not getting up in the early morning.
Also,
yeah, we have lights on our phone. So for me, we met. She was uncomfortable with getting rid of both headlamps, but I got rid of my headlamp.
And it came really handy when we had a commitment that we had to meet people at 10 a.m. at a trailhead that meant getting up before dawn.
So I would just say that thinking twice about what electronics mean to you when you're gonna be on the trail. So people don't need to bring 70 cords and 5 batteries, and so really think about what it means for you to get. And then the other little anecdote, which was not something we really did, but we heard on the trail, was we had these journals that we were going to write in every night, but we were too dang tired. But what we learned is use your phone audio recorder to talk and record the things about your day, and you can always transcribe that later. So those would be, my anti-luxury and theoretically luxury technological item.
Yeah. I mean, your experience with the solar panels is pretty consistent with just about everybody. I don't know many people who started with a solar panel that finished with one. And same with me. I got the same exact Anchor solar panel a couple of years ago, and I ditched it by Leadville. And it just was too much trouble. And then when I did use it, it ended up making my phone too hot to even be functional. It was just it wasn't the solar panel wasn't the case, but you leave it out in the sun because that's how it works. And then the phone, you either have to remember to tuck it under the solar panel or it won't work. And it was just a real hassle. But I think also thinking through the sort of the luxury of not having electronics and the need for it, kind of your point about the fuel earlier, your phone will last you 6 or 7 days if you only turn it on for a couple of minutes at night to see if you have service. Or, I would turn mine on when I got to mountain passes because often that's when you get the service. So I'd check and see if I had any messages, but if not, I would turn it off, and I would never, it wouldn't matter if it's on or anyway. So being mindful about that and cognizant of it. I also love the idea of recording yourself. I think also recording yourself is important because so much can be put down on paper, but you can't catch your tone or your mood doesn't really translate quite the same way. So capturing it in some way, I would encourage people to do so. Either on video, you can use your notes pad on the phone if you have it. You can take some paper and do it, but you can also take 6 sheets and put them in a Ziploc with a golf pencil. That would work as well. So there are other options, but kind of to your point there, 5-star, reflecting and trying to remind yourself who you are when you're on the trail. I think that's important. I think that makes a big difference whenever, you hear a lot about post-hike depression. And I think that a lot of people probably experience that. I feel maybe not, depression is probably not a fair thing for what I felt after a hike, but certainly that sense of purpose and drive when your daily routine is limited to just locomotion, food, and water, then it makes life a lot simpler to sort things out. So when you get back and life starts coming at you, it's a great time to remind yourself of the problem solver that you are. So you might end up in a situation where your water filter breaks and then you have 10 miles to go with water and you have to figure out how to borrow water or whatever. You get the idea. You problem solve. Forget your stakes back at the hostel, and then you need to use twigs or rocks, that kind of thing. Having notes of all those things can help remind you that you are capable of solving those problems. So I love that idea as well. I think that's important as well. Kanikanik, you have the final item here, final experience, however however you term it.
I feel embarrassed after hearing this. Really, this is wonderful discussion and really deep thoughts. So I'm going to just say something very prosaic: an umbrella. That is a luxury item for me. I loved it on the Colorado Trail, and I will continue carrying it. I used it just as much for rain because it was an extremely rainy summer last year, very, very rainy. In fact, I think we had rain almost every day. So I used it a lot for that. I also used it for sun, and there's just, for me, something about not having the rain coming directly down on my head or on my rain jacket, and along with the umbrella. Another thing that 5-star just recommended strongly to me just a few days before we were starting was a pack cover, and I'm so glad he recommended that. And I went out and got one because it did rain so much, and just having a dry pack in your tent, I think it leaves less condensation. Same thing with the umbrella; it keeps a lot of condensation off of you. Had a hailstorm one day that was just hellacious, and just having the umbrella taking the brunt of that was really nice. So I think for me, it's an 8 ounces that's worth it. But I know not everybody agrees with it.
Yep. The Girl Plus Dog Adventures, when she was out there, I think it was it was heading up into near Camp Hale, right? So that Hale, Hale. I think she saw some Hale, Hail. And it can be a game changer for a lot of those segments, or even the one where you end up with the sun exposure. It can be really useful because sometimes you can put on sunscreen, but you still get dehydrated from it a lot faster without that shade. It can be really helpful. And then also Mad Hippies, they agree with the umbrella and on Snow Mesa. If you're not familiar, it's about 3 or 4 miles where you go with nothing, no cover whatsoever. The tallest tree, branch, bush is maybe 7 inches. And so unless you can squat really, really low, if you're not the limbo champion of your local community center, then chances are good you'll want to have that umbrella to cover up.
Great idea.
Yeah, that's a tough one because I think you do fall into a routine. I don't know about you all, and we probably don't need to get too deep into it, but if you camp anywhere near Snow Mesa, there's a good chance you're not making it down off Snow Mesa without a bathroom break in the morning, and so having something to cover up, it can be an important one for sure. So this has been just fantastic. If you want to stay with me here, we can try to do the giveaway. See, we've got a little bit of a giveaway here. And what it is, it's these guys for the 900 subscribers, the Outside Comfort Zone mugs. Let's see if we can get this thing to work. I've never tried it. And so we're going to try here to share the screen. And then here, I'm going to share the screen here, open. I don't know if it's going to even let me, everybody. Maybe it won't. I don't know. Share. There we go. Is that working? Can you see that? Maybe, maybe not. Nobody? I don't know. Maybe I should have tried this before I did this. What do you think?
Fine the way you're doing it.
Let's try it out here. We got the share screen.
Hey, Sage and 5-Star, do you remember the person we saw early on the trail who had a big, huge metal water container? I mean, stuck in the outlet of the pack. It was huge. It was like a big old thermos. That was, I think that person was regretting it. But
yeah.
He just flew in from Austin, right?
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
He had the giant bag of bagels too, right?
Hey, I won't knock the bagels, but but that's something. I used to carry so much heavier stuff that it's a revelation with things like smart water bottles and stuff like that,
So I have a winner. It's not it's not on the slide, so I can't show it here, but I went through it, and Doc Watson, who I'm thrilled to see here, has won the drawing today. Doc, I hope you're still around. Doc is a regular community member in the outside live stream. So I see Doc quite a bit with Quest, who just showed up here. Good to see you, Quest. They do the backcountry couples. So Doc, if you can send me a message over there on Instagram at Backcountry Champion, I'd love to get one of these out to you. And for those of you who are just joining here, or if you're here and you've not gotten an Outside Comfort Zone sticker, let me know where to send it on Instagram at Backcountry Champion. I'll be happy to do so. I'll get these out in the mail to you. So I've got photo proof of it here. I'm a trustworthy guy here. I promise you that. Maybe I'm fibbing. I don't know. Maybe I'm Doc Watson and I'm just tricking everybody so I can keep these. If you see me between Denver and Durango, having some Gatorade out of one of these guys, then I expect you to steal it from me and find a person named Doc Watson and send it to that person pronto. Well, I want to thank you all here. This has been really terrific. I'm really grateful for all of your thoughts and insights. I knew that this was going to be a lot of fun, and I was glad to see that you all were willing to give up a little bit of time on Easter. I hope that you all get to spend more time with your family this evening. Kanikanik, I hope to see you somewhere on one of those trail groups this summer. Maybe I'll pass you. Sage and 5-Star, I'm hoping that we can figure out a time to cross paths this summer as well out there. And I am really, really grateful for all of your time, and thank you so much for being a part of this tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Absolutely.
Snackbox.
Thanks for everything you
Absolutely.
did for us all, Snackbox. It's great.
Yeah.
Happy to be a part of this community, and I'm happy to know you all as a result of it. It's truly the real joy of the trail is not the steps you take, but the people you meet, and you can trademark that and put it on a t-shirt with my face somewhere. So
Hey,
thank you all,
Snackbox,
everybody.
One last thing. So for everybody that's watching or will watch this in the future, please consider donating to the Colorado Trail Foundation or volunteering your time in support of the Colorado Trail. It doesn't exist without us. So, please make the extra effort. A few coffees a month, donate that amount of money. Whatever you can do makes a big difference.
Yeah, I think I want to reiterate that that's a huge thing, that, this is it's all crowdfunded, but it's also the most of all the long trails in America. I don't know any that is so well cared for. And the foundation, when you go on there, I always like to point out that when you ask questions on the Facebook group, Bill Manning, the president of the Colorado Trail Foundation, will often be the person who answers that question for you. And that level of care and commitment doesn't happen anywhere else. And so making sure that you are taking care of it and giving back what you can. Some people might be, not able to give, but if you can at all, please do consider it. They make great use of those funds. And when you're out there on the trail, just pay attention to all the different things. Every time you walk over a log the center has been cut out, or every time you step over a step where it's not an enormous, huge, straight incline, those are all a big part of it. And where the trail is, if you're not on a forest road but you can see a forest road nearby, you can rest assured the trail once went there, and it was through the hard work of the CTF that made that all possible. So really enjoy it, do your best to give back whenever you're able. I think that's a really important point, 5-star. So I'm happy that you brought that up. I think it's a great one for wrapping up here, because if we're thinking extras, the best thing you can do is be an extra contributor to the CTF. So
Giving's
terrific.
a luxury too.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. I'm grateful for you all. I'm grateful for the trail, and I look forward to seeing you all soon. Stick around, the three of you, for just a minute. I'll say goodbye personally, and everybody else, have a great day today. And thank you for joining in tonight. I'm grateful for all of you out there, and I look forward to seeing you somewhere between Denver and Durango sometime this summer. Take care, everybody.